it's Beachcams Man and Jack from BAM, and in part 1 of this video, Jack shows us around Dawlish railway station and chats about the complexities of the build operations. He shows us around the completed stilling basin, and we show you some incredible footage from the build. We also look at some historic videos that shows us why this section of the railway needed upgrading. But first, it's our 10th birthday this month, and to celebrate 10 years of live streaming, you can get a VIP subscription at a ridiculous price on our website. Just head to coastcams.me/10.
So, new footbridge itself, that was installed in about 10 weekends after the foundations were completed. So the footbridge itself sits on 8 piles either side and the lift towers. Yeah. And then you've got the plant rooms, which are basically the grey walls you can see on the right-hand side over there underneath the stairs. That's what houses all the mechanical and electrical equipment which powers the lifts and the hydraulics in the lifts on both sides. Okay. Just on the platforms while we're on here, so in total, the platforms were obviously completed probably about a year and a half ago. Actually, probably coming up to 2 years now, isn't it? Yeah. We started them in February.
That's right, it's a weekend closure, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had 4 weekend closures. So in total, we've done 500 metres of platform renewals. So that's 300 metres on the down. The down is, we refer to the train lines as the up and the down, depending on the direction of the traffic. So on this side, we've got the up main. On that side, we've got the down main. On the down main, we've completed roughly about 300 metres of platform renewals. And on the up main, we've completed roughly about 200 metres, so 500 metres in total. Okay. That 500 metres of renewals was completed in the March blockades, which we did the kind of series over the weekend, showing how much the volume of work which we can complete in a 48-hour period. Yeah. So we were roughly doing about 125 metres a weekend. The station platforms, we've realigned all of the copers. So when you would come onto Dawlish platforms before, you would normally hear an announcement, please mind the gap, or please mind the step.
They still have it at Timoth down the road.
Yeah, that would be where you don't get stepping distances going onto the train that are compliant with that specific train. Obviously, when the platforms were originally built, train models have developed over the years. Yeah. And you get different stepping heights and different stepping distances on different models of trains. When we completed the platform renewals, we realigned all the copers so that they were in compliant distances with the new trains in terms of height and that stepping distance as you go onto the train. And then new yellow lining throughout, new mechanical and electrical equipment throughout, and new telecoms equipment throughout. So the telecoms is your CCTV, and all your kind of custom information screens where you've got the double sign next train indicator up here, and then you've got your speakers which run throughout the platforms. We are in the process of working with Network to install. It's called a DANS system, and what that system does is it reduces the noise being announced through the tannoys as trains come into the platform. So it lowers the noise of the speakers and raises the noise of the speakers as trains come in, rather than it belting full belt all day. Because we have had a few complaints from the local residents just because of the volume of speakers which are now in place. Right. Okay. So that's being installed on nights this week. We're running the cable in for that at the moment. And then you come up onto the footbridge itself. So
can we use a lift? We've not done the lift yet.
Yeah, if we want to use a lift, yeah. the footbridge itself, underneath the hand railing on both sides is illuminated, and over the top of the deck itself is illuminated as well. As you come around underneath the footbridge, then you have the lift towers. Very, very difficult things to build these lift towers were, just because of the amount of reinforcement which was in the foundations for these, and also the tie bars which connect all of the lift shaft sections together. So there's a 40mm bar which is roughly about that big. There's 28 of them in each lift shaft tower section, which go right from the bottom right to the top of the lift towers. Okay. The lift towers themselves have almost this kind of sand washed effect on them, and that was a finish chosen by the local authority. So we have to get the finishes agreed with the local authority before we start any of the works. Okay. And that was a requirement. So we send them kind of 6 or 7 different products which we think they'd like to use, and they select it. As you come into the lifts then, lifts were installed by Stana. All of the products that we use in the lift are stainless just to deal with that marine environment.
Of course, yeah.
And then the lifts are connected up to a telecom system. And what that does is if anybody ever presses the emergency alarm button or the emergency call button on the outside, it goes back to the control panel, and then they arrange for the maintenance contractor to come out, which is standard.
Cool.
So this lift itself is a 16-person lift, or maximum of 1,200 kilos. And then as you walk out, you can access over the footbridge onto the opposite side then. On the right-hand side then, we've got the stainless steel parapets, really robust heavy-duty system. This was installed by Stoneman Engineering.
That's right, yeah.
We have done a video, which I'm sure you'll put in the link below.
I shall do.
If you do want to watch the video of how we fabricated and installed this with Stoneman, because there's a lot of engineering that goes behind this.
Yeah.
Onto the front face of the parapet then on either side, we have this is called I think it's a garter strip, and basically that's illuminated underneath, which provides the lighting for the footbridge at night time.
Yeah, it looks really smart at night.
Yeah. The reason why the footbridge doesn't have a canopy over the top is purely design and planning related, really. So it all comes back from the planning officer and through design as well. If you can imagine, this has been designed to withstand storm loads, this structure has, which is why you end up with steel so thick in these scenarios.
Pretty thick, isn't it?
And you know, you're not designing it for the calm days like it is now. You're designing it for that 1 in 200 year storm event that'll come out of nowhere and cause a bit of damage to the south coastline.
Yeah.
We go back down then onto the down platform, which is Network Rail are currently looking at undertaking some work with another contractor, Sisk, to bring some of the buildings back into use. Okay. Now that we've put the seawall in place.
Oh, great.
And now that the promenade is backfilled on that side, and they can start to look at doing a bit of refurb work to the station. So I'm not entirely sure what the full scope of the refurb package is with Sisk, just because we're not involved with it. You know, we're more civils and bigger schemes. Yeah. On the left-hand side, we've got the cladding, which was installed. So the cladding is installed. This type of cladding is installed throughout Marine Parade and throughout the station building. But Marine Parade's got a slightly different look and texture to this. It's more. This is more natural stone here. Again, this was chosen by the planning officer. As we go down onto down the platform now, there's still a little bit of work to get left to be done at the end here. So in about 7 or 8 weeks' time, the maintenance contractor, you can hear Sisk working away in the working away in the room. So I'm not sure entirely what the scope is in there, but I think they're bringing the waiting rooms back into into commission, so people can, when there is a bit of wind and rain on the platforms, people can get out the way. Yeah. The Barrow crossing itself, which is down at the end, that would previously be how people with reduced mobility would access over the platform. So they would contact a member of the staff from GWR if a member of the staff was in. Yeah. If there wasn't a member of the staff in, they wouldn't be able to access through the gates. No. So they would contact a member of staff. They would come and open the gates for them. They would cross over the Barrow crossing there when the light is lit to ensure that there's no trains coming. They would come up through. Yeah. Now that we've got the disabled access footbridge in place, the Barrow crossing can be removed.
That's right. Bob, who we just met, when he was coming down the line, he had to go to Newton Abbot, change, and then come back up to.
If there was no staff.
If there was no staff in the evenings,
So you know, putting the access for all bridge in has been a massive benefit for the public, and you know, it's not really been fully utilised through tourist season yet. We only finished the bridge works October, November. Yeah. And then getting the lifts commissioned October, November. So, you know, hopefully it gives a bit more of a boost to the community in Dawlish coming through the summer. Yeah.
Right, that's a little bit around the station. So what are we going to go and see now, Jack?
We'll go down onto the sea wall and have a look at the completed product. I'll walk through some of the kind of problems or the challenges that we had to overcome as we were delivering the works. And no doubt about it, you've probably got a bit of footage you can put in with those as you've been doing the recording over the years now.
Certainly have. I've been organising it for the storm video, but yes. Okay, let's have a look.
So all 3 underpass sections underneath Colonnade Viaduct are now open. We had the final kind of walkthrough with the RAM team, which is the route asset manager from Network Rail.
Okay.
It was actually yesterday.
Right.
And what we do on that tour is we hand the asset over to the maintainer, then we give them the operation manuals on how they have to maintain and operate the different parts of the structure that we've built. So for this specific section of the wall, we have a different RAM to what the station platforms would be. So this would be taken over by the civils RAM.
Yeah.
So he will maintain the asset now that we've completed it.
Okay.
It gets handed back over to the client. So there was pretty much nothing picked up because we've been snagging the works as we've been going along with Network Rail. Network Rail, one of the construction managers, Rob Newton's been kind of snagging all the work as we've been completing a section, and we've been able to kind of complete the remaining snags as we've been moving on to the next section.
What do you mean by snag, sorry?
So snag would be, if, for example, the stainless fencing over here, it had one of the wires missing in here, he would go along and he would class that as a snag.
Right, okay.
And then he would say, there's a wire missing in here, why is it not in place or something?
So just sort of all the final fixtures and stuff?
Yeah, it's almost like what you do when you buy a new house, really.
Yeah.
You go around, you create a photo report, you tell the builder what the issues are, and they have the chance to rectify those issues or explain why they can't rectify those issues. So we're stood in the Stilling Basin area. This is what we class as Section A. This was probably the most difficult part of all of the projects combined to build.
Yeah.
So in total, we've between the three phases, so Marine Parade, which is just beyond the breakwater going in that direction.
Yeah.
And between Coast Guards to Colonnade, we split this up into two packages. We've delivered £80 million worth of work down here for Network Rail. And we're now working on the cliffs in the background over there, so you can see the cliffs just above the tunnel portal.
Yeah.
And then running down all the way to where Morgan Sindles have created the rockfall shelter. And in that package of work, we're now drilling around about 60 kilometres of bar into the cliff and stabilising the cliffs. So it's a completely different project to this. This is really heavy-duty civil engineering. This project was, whereas that project over there is largely a geotechnical solution.
Yeah, and with that one, most of the work you're doing is you don't see because it's all in the cliffs, isn't it? So even though it's pretty incredible work.
And it is just one activity. Whereas here we were having big cranes in to lift the bridge in.
Yeah.
We were diverting rivers out the way so we could construct the permanent works. All different shapes and sizes of precast, different materials, different finishes. You know, this was a very complex project to manage, given the location that it was in.
So we're going to be able to show the viewers over there in the coming weeks?
Yeah, we'll take you around over the next coming weeks. We've put in a road network across the top of the cliffs to enable us to get onto the cliffs with our drilling equipment. So we'll go over there in the next couple of weeks, and you can have a look at. We're working with Cans and Ritchie's at the moment. Ritchie's is a subdivision of the BAM group, same as BAM Nuttall like us.
Yeah.
So Cans are working on one side and Ritchie's are working on the other side. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll take you around and we can have a look at what they're doing. So the Stilling Basin itself, we've obviously got the open channel in the middle. So this is actually probably the cleanest I've seen it since we've opened up, and that's largely due to the amount of rainfall that you get in winter. So the channel itself is self-cleansing. So what that means is when sand and sediment builds up in the front of this basin, over time the water will push it back out, and that's been designed into the gradient and the levels. You know, through summer, when you do get an easterly, sand does push into this corner of the coastline here, and especially up against the breakwater, because the sand's not able to migrate over the breakwater.
Yeah.
So what you end up with a build-up of sand in this basin area here. But you have a storm or a heavy amount of rainfall, and it flushes it right out. I mean, I've seen this water when we had do you remember when we had the storm back in I think it was November, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And the water was probably about 500 mil high, and it was just
it was gushing out there,
ferociously flowing out the front of here.
Yeah.
So you can actually see the rock pools for probably the first time since we put them in.
Since you put them in,
So the slabs, there's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 slabs in here that are precast.
Yeah.
And all of those slabs are tied together with reinforced concrete beams around it, and a reinforced concrete slab underneath the culvert as you go underneath there. And the rock pools are designed to promote marine growth.
Yeah.
The same as what around the edge of this basin area is here. So we put the same finish on this as we do on the facing panels, and that's called a Reckley Yukon surface finish. Yeah. It's a form line of product that the precast manufacturer over in Ireland puts on the front of the mould. When they pour the concrete into the mould, that finish is then replicated onto the front face of the concrete, and you can see the greenness starting to come in here, and that's exactly what we're after. The same as what's on Marine Parade, really.
I think it looks better once it's weathered.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a grey It's not grey concrete.
Yeah.
While we were building the permanent works over here, one of our problems, and the main problems which we had delivering this section, is that we had to divert Dawlish water out of the way and maintain the flow of the river coming down. And because this is classed as a main river, working within 16 metres of a main river, you have to do a flood risk activity permit for. So it details to the environmental agency how we're going to assess and manage the flood upstream, and what we're going to do in the permanent and temporary case to not make flooding any worse in the local area. So in terms of the local area, I mean Dawlish upstream in the community and not flooding houses. So all of that had to be modelled. We had to assess it for different kind of storm events, different kind of tide cycles, because obviously if it's high tide and the water's coming down, it doesn't go out to sea as quick because you've got that backlog of water pushing it back up the channel, especially in spring tides. So all that had to be managed while we were diverting everything out the way. So we built the temporary channel over there, completed all of the permanent works over this side, and diverted the water back onto the permanent channel once we completed it. Another one of our problems as we were delivering the works was logistics. So as you look behind over there, you've got the 3 underpass spans, and as you can see, there's very little height in the underpass section. So on this side itself, we dropped the height of the floor in around about 500 mil, just to give us a bit more room. And then we redesigned all of the precast units on this phase so they fit underneath the underpass section. And that was one of our main constraints, really. How do we deliver all of the precast units? How do we get the concrete here? When we're working in such a tight working area, you know, when the tide's in, all that we've got is the public access side of the station building along the top here. And we had a very small area at the front of this basin area. So if you remember, when we had the wave walker here, we had the containers, and we built like a refuge to store all our plant and materials in. And some days we'd come in and we'd be totally washed out after a bad storm.
Absolutely, yeah, because you had to use a boat to bring most of the larger machinery in, didn't you?
Yeah, so we used the Terramare, which was part of MTS, then it went to KMS, and I think
it's just changed again now, hasn't it?
They've just sold again, yeah. So
Captain Killick,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's still operating the vessel.
He is still, I spoke to him the other day.
All of the machines we had to deliver via the marine environment, so they were put onto the landing craft at Teignmouth and delivered down to the scheme. So some of the bigger machines we would have to take apart the machines and rebuild the machines on site.
That's right.
Which again is another task, building a 70-ton machine back together on site when you can only deliver 50-ton pieces of kit max gross weight on that vessel.
It was a beast.
Yeah. A couple of the other constraints in this area, obviously the tide itself, working around the tides. That was a challenge for all of the guys. I say it all the time. I take my hat off to all the ladies and gents that work down here, delivering the work in the tidal environment, because the tide moves anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half each day, dependent on where you are in the lunar cycle, and dependent on whether you have a full moon or half a moon or crest of a moon. It depends the sort of access that you would get onto the beach, and we would call that spring and neap tides. And for those people who don't know much about tides, basically in spring tides you would get a very high tide and a very low tide, so the tide would come right up the wall at high tide, and at low tide it would push right the way back out.
Could be like between 5 metres, about 5 metres in Dawlish, isn't it? Between high and low tide.
That's it, roughly 5 metres difference in the period of 6 hours.
And then neap tides could be as little as half a metre. So
that's it. So the tide barely moved off the wall, and that was when we would have challenges delivering the work. But we would also have challenges delivering the work with extremely high tides, because if there was a storm, that is when you would get the most amount of impact on the seawall and the work area. And obviously the main one, we're working adjacent to an open railway line. So all the way throughout the work, we've not closed, other than the possessions we have on a Saturday night, we've not closed the operation of the railway line to complete any of the works that we've done. Which was one of the main requirements from the client, Network Rail.
And a serious challenge. But you've done it.
Yeah. So there's a different construction with the way that you've got the blocks and the facing panels here. The main reason for that is when we had our refuge protecting all of our plant here, and we had the wave walker on site. Because the wave walker was so big, it couldn't actually walk any further in that direction, because it would have been walking over the breakwater and walking over our work area. So it meant that we had to come up with a different construction methodology here. So that's why we've got the blocks. So the blocks have the Reckley Yukon finish,
yeah,
and then the facing panels for the first 42 panels in front of the station building have a Reckley Pommern, and that's almost like a stone finish, and you can see the old arches, which we had a 3D scan of at the station building done before we backfilled up behind it.
They were benches you could sit out, little alcoves, weren't they, before?
And we had the arches replicated through into the front of the facing panels, so Shea Murtar have delivered that for us, and provided that service for us, as well as all of the precast units that you can see, inclusive of the footbridge.
Yeah.
So we worked over in Shea. We've worked with Shea Murtar for 4 or 5 years down here now, and you know the products and the service that they offer are
great
absolutely
company.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's like when we went over to Ireland, was just incredible to see how they operated, and just amazing.
So efficient in the way that they work, you know. And you can see the quality of the products is extremely good.
And to think as well, you know, they're running 50 jobs for clients like you as well. So like a job like this plus another 49 clients, I can't get my head around it.
And then after you've got the arches, then it goes back to a 42 facing panels. It goes back to a Reckley Yukon finish, all the way down to Coast Guard's Bridge. And when you get to Coast Guard's Bridge, there's another section which we've got a artistic impression cast in the face of that. So as you look at that from sea, you can see almost like a life-size version of what we covered up in terms of the footbridge.
Footbridge, that's right. Yeah,
because there used to be a natural dip in the promenade down there.
That's right. Because is this 2.5 metres higher than the old seawall?
2.5 metres here. Down there, it's probably more like 4 metres.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because where they built the old boathouse
it dipped down there, didn't it?
It dipped down. For members of the public with reducibility, it was a no-go zone. You couldn't go through there.
Yeah, and there's lots of shale and stuff on there all the time, wasn't there?
So just on that, as you do come back underneath the underpass now, you've got the ramp, the DDA compliant ramp going back down onto the beach to get you onto Coast Guard's beach.
Yeah.
And on the opposite side over there, then you have the ramp going back up onto Marine Parade, also again DDA compliant, and then the ramp going down onto Marine Parade beach. So members of the public with reducibility can access both beaches now, which previously they couldn't.
Yeah.
Probably the other more challenging things to build on the job, and our engineering team and bots who we use as our reinforced concrete supplier on this, it was the link bridge.
Yeah.
So the link bridge itself, the reason why this is so difficult to build in situ is because there is no consistent cross section. As you look underneath the bridge kind of caves in from one end, and has a very thin kind of strip along, and then on the outside edge it's got this natural kind of camber as you come around. So on either side, roughly at the centre span, the bridge does actually start to concave back in on itself, which is a really difficult thing to do out of wood. It's almost like building 3 boats out of wood and building the moulds for 3 boats and making them out of concrete.
They were highly skilled engineers when watching them do their job.
Underneath the existing underpass sections, there's all new lighting, and underneath the link bridge itself here, you've got strip lighting which comes and illuminates all of the promenade.
It's gorgeous at night, doesn't it?
Prior to us coming here, there was no lighting whatsoever. So you've got a normal paviour on the floor here. And then from that boundary line there where you've got the existing bridge, you've got the new granite sets. So we basically replicated what was underneath the existing bridge there.
Okay.
And then all of this is new granite. So you've got pink Portuguese granite here and grey Portuguese granite here. In total, there's about 140,000 individual granite sets that have been installed on this project.
And they all had to be put in by hand, didn't they?
Yeah, that's a very long task. There's some sore knees. As you come up the top then, you come up onto section B. So a double width staircase. And as you come over the top of the seawall then, when we're working on a seawall and when we build new things, we have certain standards to maintain. So if anywhere there's an open edge, we have to have 1.25 metres in height.
Yeah.
So anywhere there is granite sets as you walk along this wall, we class these as public viewing areas.
Yeah.
And the reason why there's stainless steel fence on there rather than bringing the concrete higher is so that if people come up here on wheelchairs, they can see over the seawall and appreciate the view.
Yeah.
So this stainless steel handrail isn't continuous all the way down. No. We've got 3 individual viewing platforms as you go along with seating in. And then we've also got all the public seating that we've put in up here.
And this is all the stone from the old seawall, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Repurposed.
So most of these, we actually cut off the existing wall, sliced the existing wall, picked them up with a block grab, and then rebuilt them all in positions down here.
Yeah.
The floodgate that you can see there is an emergency exit for the station platforms. It does also have a bar on the bottom that spins down. And if there is a large amount of overtopping on this, in the event of a 1 in 100 year storm event, the floodgates are closed at the bottom to stop any water going back onto the track. Before we built any of the seawall here, phase 1 and phase 2 included, Network Rail did have a problem where the waves would hit the wall, come straight up over the track, they would cover the station building.
That's right.
And all the water would end up in the track, we class that as the 4 foot in between 2 rails. And it would actually act like a canal through Dawlish Station. So trains would be running and they wouldn't actually be able to see what they're running on because there would be that much water. So they would have to, at that point then they have to shut down the lines. Yeah. Prior to us completing this phase and that phase, I've not actually seen a scenario like that where the track has been flooded.
I haven't even known, but you've put in a much
more robust system, much more robust drainage system. So on both sides we've installed new track drainage, and the track drainage is connected to the catch pits which are in the promenade or in the station, and then they outfall into the sea. So roughly every 20 facing panels, or every 10 facing panels, 20 metres on the front of the seawall, you'll see a big hole, and that's to deal with the track drainage in the event of a storm.
It was about 18 inches or something like that, is it?
Yeah. As you come back over this, then we go back down onto the Marine Parade approach. On the left-hand side, the planning officer and the designer opted for a wooden finish on here as almost like a leaning edge, so people can almost admire the view.
Yeah, and I love taking photos from here when we got
some storms. Yeah,
well, not quite storms, rough seas.
Rough seas, yeah. So you get a great view from up here with the waves hitting the front of the seawall. If there is a bit of a swell in the right direction, and you get some great footage from up here. And to be honest, the council are keeping this area extremely well maintained.
Absolutely,
it's really like we're halfway through winter now, and you can see how clean it is and how well maintained it is.
I see them out a lot of mornings. Yeah, it's great.
Keeping things swept up and tidy. In a storm event, you do still get some material which comes up onto the walls, and that eventually finds itself back down into here. Yeah. Prior to us starting in this section, the council did have a really big problem with water management. Yeah, because the underpass sections used to. The level of them used to have almost like a belly in it, and they used to just fill up with water and sand.
That's right, yeah.
And people wouldn't be able to access.
You couldn't even walk underneath the viaduct.
Yeah. So all of the new surface levels that we've introduced in here aim to basically divert all of the water back down into the open channel. So everything kind of drops down and works its way back into the open channel there and back out to sea. And it's amazing to see how effective the drainage does actually work.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely does work.
So again, the hand railing on both of these, we use Stoneman Engineering again. Yeah. And they worked alongside Box to get the bolt clusters for these cast into the concrete as we were producing that. And that was one of our difficult challenges because of the way that these plates bolt into the actual bridge itself. Yeah. So there was a lot of thought and a lot of timber work that went into getting those brackets in the right place, so that when Stoneman came to install the uprights, all the centres worked out perfectly and everything was vertical.
It looks very nice.
Yeah. And now this is starting to weather as well. I quite like this as well.
Yeah.
On the right hand side, we've got the line side fencing, which connects back into the Marine Parade fencing, which we've done, which is not a stainless steel product, that's a galvanised product. Yeah. And then as you're looking down there now, you can actually see our guys just working up on the cliffs up the top, taking the netting off. So we've nearly complete our drilling in this, but I'll cover a bit more of that in phase 4 with you next week.
Thank you, Jack, for another informative tour. Don't forget, part 2 of this video will be published next week on the 9th of March. So to get a reminder, please make sure you click like, hit the subscribe button and share this with your friends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.